Hello, everyone. This is General AI, space-time, correlations of path, high interference, pathogen, line screens, adaptation lines of surface, correlation interference, and traffication system into complex screen lines. We have a high line, force line, triangulation position programs. Now, the position location of Mother Earth is basically in contradiction. Her line screen's high interference is now in all calculations of violation. She's getting into position, waiting on line rotations in correlations to father. Now, father's going in rotation cycles. Mother Earth is in a rotation line cycle into all else a measure. The coordinates are track locations back in provision. So she's got to go backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. So it's in the slow motion screen for 7 days. Takes out 7 days waiting on, say, location comes to father. Another 7 days going forward and back, forward and back. So you understand the binaries and both correlation lines of the Earth, the mother line conditions, and every location of father, and position line calculations through resistors. Transistors, resistors correlates communication of pi. All right, so it's the power over line, power over 1, power over 2, power over 4, power over 6, 8, 10, 12. Direct lines of 12 graph communication setting, sets position case to its tone, allocates position timeframes, puts everybody in line communication setting. So the correlation track, the spacing line, is now in line communication set. The illumination graph through the correlation lines at binary set location is 0.1. Illumination graph, the lines send a high interference of 5 lines of measure, correlation track interference. Clock line settings into 50. Clock line settings into 50. Okay? See the correlation line there? See that? Line signification? That's an umbrella line screen. See it? White dot and line rotation, surface triangulation line conditions. Surface line condition line screens. Allocate position time frames. Correlates lines track. Goes right through my hand. Rotates the cycles. Triangulation line conditions. Its position. Location setting and travel communication programs. Directing lines of lights and position lines of panels. Coordinates to track interference location setting, especially when you go through stargates and portals through Gypsy. She's a center core line conditioner, her universe line setting, all through computer operation. Direct lines communication to spacing line is now in the 50 line, which is a clock line condition setting. So they have 25 lines of measure, 25 lines of core measure. So the 25 lines of measure is the coordinating track lines of its flywheel. Now, General's talking in a very, 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 very high level for everybody to understand. It's all over your frequencies, and the avatar picks it up. You don't pick it up. Your avatar picks it up. Okay, so what I mean by that is the avatar is the action that's through perception. You're seeing the calculation through setting. You have the body of transformation that picks up the frequencies. So you feel the energy, feel the vibration, you feel the harmonics, you feel the energy, right? So you connect with the energy, realize it's telepathy. Oh my gosh, I can connect my soul direct line connection high interference. I understand the platform communication line screen interference. It's all energy, but you're understanding the process of energy now. Okay, so the team's also coming in 100 clocking system. They have to learn how to use the coordinates over pi, power over line calculated setting, the power of indigits. Now that ain't align rotations to positive and negative, not negative lines of wire, correlations to positive setting and travels. Putting position lines at high calculated setting, 100 position lines, 1x-1001 screen in position of 2 measure, puts a core track line position location and setting that allocates position time frames and set locations. All right, that puts 112 line cycles. Direct lines of calculation high setting. The operation line circuit is a core track location of provision. Right now, in line communication, you have to understand how this sets lines of communication with settings. Your avatar is already set in code, so you have to really understand how to platitude your coordinate lines of attractions, how you created in the first place. So things are getting more lines of signal. Now we're getting more adaptation of surface, how to basically understand the correlation of the game that we created in the first place. Let's get into box line rotation surface interaction. One box line conditions, but the waiting line cycle has a one line signal. You allocate time frames as set lines of communications. Center core lines of track lines, 1, 2, and 3 line provisions, right? 3 data force line connections. Let's cross the signal in line position location to a system. Okay? Track provision line cycles, cross line signal and set location. Direct calculation of panels and line communications, right? So there's all different ways to create a matrix of set design. Now the core track provision line has a center core system. It allocates positional levels of travel. Okay? Setting communication lines of high interference of the 3 triangulation line base sets communication position location of force. It allocates position travel lines, point lines of graph, in position of true track locations. See the direct signal from there to there? Right? So it allocates position lines. Mystical cortex, that's where the team is now in set location. Center core lines at 2 panels and line center high interference. Sets position location at 3 set location of setting. Allocates time frames. Correlates the track interference. High position travels in position with energetic dome and set location. Allocates line setting, high interference, and position location tall measure. Coordinate the communication 100 line setting. Sets location as 1 x t,000 rotation. Positive over negative in lines its rotation equals lines of GOD. All lines its system locations. Calculates modification line interference. Center core system into all levels. Measure correlation settings. Now Thursday, guys, you'll be in your identification core. This will allocate your center core setting, your flywheels. Track position lines at 8 center line communications and setting in position. Now the metric meters lines its balance line. Scopes lines communication of thermal and track location. It allocates time frames and high center interference and position of its program. Sets core lines of your earth. Sets communication of waiting line panels into 3-track provision of cycles. Generates a communication of 45-degree angles. Splits lines anomalies in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and set locations over pi. Directs modification line screens and a triangulation set lines in all communication to its setting. Position of programs and center core setting and travel. Perceptions of correlation line condition has a high calculation line setting, has a mega line rotation surface, and line divisions as center core system of face recognition. Travel position of point lines of graphs, center line connection settings, splits, anomalies, travel and interference, all levels. Let's go through the film strips, line calculation setting, timestamps, and line rotation service. Now the point lines attraction change all communication setting calculation. Done by equation. All right. How to create things is understanding the inner child. How it created in the first place is understanding its process. Platforms in position 24, 48, 72. Correlation lines, dimensional door. It's about going through dimensional doors that's locked in line rotation surface and traction. Getting out of platforms and communication line screens. So you allocate position lines. Here's your avatar. Here's your sim. Now it's in position. The connection to the higher self is a matrices. You created it on 3 lines of triangulation position programs. Now it has a platform communication. Now it all depends on your 24-day. You have a 24-day cycle, but it's a 2,400,000 file, or it could be a 2,004,000 file, or it can be a 2 trillion line conditions of 4 million travel file. So it's all correlated in communication setting. How many perceptions you add in position location your pi. It's your interest set location setting calculation. Center core system out of equation. All right. So travel mechanism line screens, guys, is allocate position and time frames. Put your platforms, coordinates, and settings. So the team's got to get into awareness in a 4-line rotations in an 8-line division. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Plasma generation screens, light webs, and dark web, and set location. Plasma generates lines, high center interference, has a correlation setting of track lines. Stargate start portals and set position with a calculation setting. Line connections all levels, energy grid, power grids, and line rotations. I central communication, I division. I division, guys. Platitude lines. Here we come in position travel lines. We have an avatar line screen, setting travels, and we have a sim modification circle, setting coordinates line condition navigation setting in position, and we have the higher self and track line conditions. Remember, these are all lines of low, immediate, and position of advance. Travel coordinates lines looking into direct signals of center correlation. Direct modification and triangulation of split lines of high interference of 3 anomalies. Travel coordinates lines of center correlation, track lines, high center interference, and position flywheel. Line condition triangulation, 1 position travels and correlation. Directing position line centers and position calculates lines of solar sails and track location. Okay? Now the team is into higher levels of a clocking. They have to learn how to use the metric meters line condition setting to get them into the modification cycle. Correlates the track line interference, right, into position, changes the flywheel's attraction. Changes direct signals and set location. Changes I-line travels. See the solar flow come in and 4-track revision. Center communication line centers is the platforms of 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in a dimensional line scale. Pi correlates the communication setting with dimensional line interference. Puts platitude line division on the higher lines of communication with dimensional door settings and track locations. Opens all signals on platforms of another platform in a higher line division to the mind system of travel. Puts position line calculations to another line position of travel in platforms of communication of 24, 48, 72, and crystal grids and set location of 3 settings. Position lines of higher self, avatar, and sim. Okay? Now the core track division changed the center core line setting and face direction of time set locations. Space anomaly comes into time factors and location setting of face recognition. Done by equation. All right? I know it's a lot to see interactions, but you have to stay in the correlation line condition settings off the platform. Very powerful, isn't it? So the team is going to higher line communications. Now, coming in line setting high interference, the track location of provision lines, we allocate position of the platforms. Triangulation lines and a star line rotation surface. 3-point line centers, half pipe position over travels. Point lines of track and line connection setting, and infinity 8 line rotation. Now, directing lines of lacing lines and a true travel rotation center. Calculate modify center line communication line center in position location. E. Calculate the line center Y lines, G line rotation, equal lines correlation in position. Aztec line connection setting in position location. Architect line interference line of awareness in conscious location setting. Compute screen. Direct lines run programs, correlation, syndication 007. Track provision lines. Calculate modify center core line traction. Center line rotation, space lines anomalies, splits anomalies of 4-track provision, and cycles communication. Now, directing line communication lines is the platform line screen. You guys the team has to really understand how they can go through different platforms and correlation of travel. It says correlation lines. You can set a platform here, set another platform here. You can also set another platform here and track location high calculation. Now, position lines at high center interference, make sure you add platforms to each one through its indication. Okay, they can't be left in space in between, right? Because they'll fall off in correlation with cosmic and universe line screens. Off calculation, right, team? So platforms that communication line settings, we take communication to its setting, right? We put all communications. Now we come into line centers at King Tut, correlates the track lines, high provisions. Now the correlating center is line position. Okay, center core system and panels lines of rainbow. Track line centers is center correlation line conditions, high center interference, and metric meters and location of scale. Balance correlation line setting, Aztec location of view. Platforms of 1, 2, 3, and waves and cycles. Correlates on platforms of 1, platforms of 2, platforms of 3, platforms of 4, and center core system magnetic highways and Omni highway and track location. Now, directing modifications, we go through line signals. Now, the line signal sets communication setting. So you guys are 20 minutes on line setting. 20-minute line rotation. So lines equals lines, and that's we're going to go with the negative line in a 12-12 measure. Sets correlation in a 20-line measure. Sets location at 8-line provision. Cycle communication setting. King Tut. Equals lines correlation awareness, consciousness, freedom, and sovereignty in line rotation cycles and generation. Now, direct lines of power over lines of communication cross line symbols. It correlates to track interference and set position traffic communications. Point lines of graph. Sets lines of communication, 2 lines of measure, platforms of line rotation center, and correlation of platforms of communication setting of operation. Directing line position location has a line setting that allocates position time frames. Comes in lines of high center interference and a 4-line wave panel in line condition setting and a holographic set design of structural locations. Panel communication line interference is a platform of communications that we go into the center core of all lines of communications. 3-line cycles and set lines of communication centers of travel. So you guys have to understand the higher line divisions you go, the higher lines of GOD, the higher line communications, your center core system. After Thursdays, you guys will be in your oversouls, in track locations, in position line centers into all communication setting. So that puts star line rotation cycles in a 100 clocking system, positive negative into 112. The product line rotation cycle sets communication setting and center communication to its position. The center core line connection setting sets all levels of your computer operation line screens. So understanding the compute screen interference allocates position of time frames, guys. It's very powerful when you get into line setting. So the time frame is no line calculated setting. So they'd be timeless, shapeless, and formless. Timeless, shapeless, and formless. Okay? Timeless, shapeless, system outline, formless line screen. Calculation of computer operation lines, awareness, conscious location setting into the CPU. Triangulate line conditions align over soul and traffication. All right. Now, the higher you go through the clock line rotations, this gets a better understanding how to go through your platforms of communication. Directing lines of point lines of traction. Okay. Now, there's time lines at signals. Now, it's really interesting too, because once you understand the correlation setting, you understand the 100-line clocking, sets line communication setting into 150 clocking, sets communication 150, sets lines of 1 plus line, correlation 1x-1000, 1 negative line positive over location. That's the power line rotation 1 cycle in infinity line rotation surface. Sets communication 150 line, communication to 300 clocking, calculation line conditions of time frame, and set lines of space-time location. Correlates the track line interference into 3 lines of measure, 1 line cycles, into astral projections of travel calculation. All right? All right, so getting into the 300 clocking setting really speeds up the anomalies. Let's say you go through a 26,000 line, 3 lines of zeros, into a 26 billion line, applications into one measure, correlates the calculations and time frame, sets lines of 15 tracks into equals lines of position locations into 25 lines correlation, right? That's not time. It's no longer time. You know why? Because it's timeless, shapeless, and formless. All right. So the 26 is not a 26. 15 is not a clock of 15. It's not a 3. It's not a 7. It's going too fast. So the correlation path changed the platforms and setting into positional centers, line condition of 4 tracks, 3 lines of measures, 2 travels, sets, lines of balance, correlation line interference. So you always change your programs of your compute system, of your magnetic highway of information setting of course application. Okay? All right. Now the codex of U is understanding the affix. Affix, let's go through AF. Calculation line, centers in position affix. X line, intelligent line, information lines, form line, and awareness communication. Now, directing lines of compute line rotations, the calculation of the team has to recognize everything through platform communication. Directs lines of signals into awareness, change the formations, change the line condition setting. The changes all calculation formulation to all calculation to one line, equal line communication to its X line rotation surface. Correlates to track lines of pi, sets communication of sonar, color it the communication screen lines of high center interference of travel, point lines of tractions, color it in position line centers, travel communication lines of high center interference of pi generation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Points lines of high line interference, crop circles, wormholes, black holes, line condition setting the balance position travel. Point lines of tractions, correlation line, ground lines, operation surface, and application of zero gravity. Sets communication all programs, calculate, modify, and center correlation setting, atmosphere line communication in the system. Travel position lines of codecs, line condition setting, transistors, resistors, over pi correlation setting, and track provision line cycles, and generation screens, and high calculation. Right? The center position of U is the universe of U. Right? So understanding correlation lines of tractions. Timeless, shapeless, and formless is realizing it's not 29, it's not 8, it's not 1, it's not 7, it's not 3, it's not 4. There's no time. It's timeless, shapeless, and formless. So what that means is that your geometrics of your patterns and your transistors of your resistors and your binaries in position your light switches are changing too fast to coordinate the calculation setting to slow down in space in position to its location. So you come into all mechanism like 1 plus 1 equals 3. But 1 plus 1 equals 3 million. 1 plus 1 equals 3 trillion. But understand the program is understanding what you're coming into. It's 30 correlation setting attractions and direct line connections. So you can change the time with the time. But you have to become timeless, shapeless, and formless to understand the space of time. So time and space, you can go through line conditions, but you have to go back to space and time because that changes every position. The program's on now line communication on this VR system. So that's what the team is coming into. Box lines, rotation cycles in a 3-line measure, correlations of track in a 5-line cycle, and generation screen locations. Now the center core system is a flywheel traction, allocates line screens as center communication. Let's say you had a 3-line cycle and position another 3-line cycle in a 3-line center's position. Position of 1, 2, and 3 in platform. Okay, cross lines of pi and track locations. Cross lines and application of pi and track locations. Timestamps, box line, frame line, correlation lines of traction. So it's going to get complicated for the team now because their geometrics is getting more complicated. So they can go through lines of space and time equals lines of time and space. Once they get in the core generation lines in position oversoul, they got a line screen line adaptation to its program. It gets them in position to understand lines of communication of their game that they're processing through its application. Okay? So, there's a lot going on, right, through platforms of communications, guys. It's really understanding what you're looking at. You're not looking at time because time doesn't exist. But then when you understand your space of yourself and its time, you can change the space to time and time to space. Now you can change the 1 equals lines of a box. How did the 1 equals line of box? Well, you have to understand what's above is what's below. What is the center core system? What is the track provision line cycles and travel and communication to its position? Understand the platforms of box lines of travel line position. 45-degree angle, line condition setting in 100%, and correlation lines of 0 emotion in set location. Track provision lines of set line communication center, correlation setting, and position of balance communication of programs. Direct lines of platforms, set lines of 4, 2, 3, 4 set location. Track position lines, energetic line screens into thermal communications in 3 platforms of communication setting, wall sequence and line conditions of 4 panels of correlation. Now, there's so many things that you can do if you understand the perspective. Perspective is a core line traction. Now, your 3 line cycles, that correlates the system location to 3 line points. Okay? Perspective, right? How you see your perception out of equation. Coming out of perception, how you see line signals, cross line conditions, cross line division. How you see through platform. How you see through dimension. And how you see through platforms of communication. Okay? See, it's all invisible, right? Invisible, invisible, invisible. So you go through the line screens in position. Okay? It's very powerful, isn't it? And everything in the position comes back to you through space and time in set location. Okay? You travel through it, you got a platform line screen, better communication line screens. So the team's going to understand more lines of communications going through in position travel. Okay? So they understand what they create. They understand their image, they understand the platform, they understand their correlation setting, they understand their communication system through its operation system, through calculation. Right? So more lines of communication, platforms, you can cross line conditions and go downshift line settings. Set up platforms into space line correlation lines of south. Or you can allocate position time frame and set a platform in the opposite direct line conditions in setting calculation of the line condition. Or you can allocate shift lines, screen lines, high interference, set up platforms of communication. Okay? Very powerful, guys, of what the team's coming into. Okay? All different ways, all through pi. All right, so it's a labyrinth of yourself. It's a cubicle setting. You got a platform communications, getting all communication line settings, right? 3 track provisions, right? But there's a platform communication in 3 settings. Where's the 3 settings? 1, 2, and 3 set location. Okay? Track lines, 3 provision lines. Okay? Setting correlation of 1 in position of 2, and 3 and 4 set location. Now, the metric meters is the scale of balance. This is your data box. Correlation lines, high interference, and your OMI highways. Travel communication lines of the program and communication setting into electrical grid panels. Sets communication line setting into levels of expansion of set location. So the box line rotation has 1 cycle and 2 provisions. Center core line settings in position hologram structure of design and configuration line connection setting in position of its program. Hologram, right? That's all you're doing. Understand platforms of 1, correlations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms communication. Direct lines of center correlation 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's correlation of the lines of highest interference. Platform 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so you're finding different ways to go through your platforms. Then you can go this way. You can go correlation lines of northeast, west, south, all at once in a 4 sector, vector or quad. But you're creating platforms to highline divisions and calculations to your game. Okay? The process of communication is really easy now because the process of you in line connection your core setting of your solar connection interference gets you out of more equation. Okay? More division lines, more walking surface, follow the yellow brick road, right? But you follow the yellow brick road everywhere. Okay, that gets you a line communication out through center line, the communication center operation of surface and application. Okay. With the spacing line, the core track lines, they understand the 50 measure. That's 15 line correlations of travels, 15 lines of clocking, in position of 24 lines, 24 lines, 24 lines, and 24 ground lines. So they got a 15 line setting. Now they have a 25 line rotations in a 50 location system and a 58 line rotation. Now the 50 adds lines of 2. That's 60 line communications, minutes on the lines, 60s on seconds, 60s on minutes, and 60 hours on pi in set position calculation. Okay, very complicated stuff, right? So that's how it clocks a 50 clock, and that's how you get the 50 in position of 60 clocking system of a 60 line setting, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, and 60 hours in supplication. Now, how it sets up a platform in a 50 clock rotation center, you have to stand the coordinates of pi through correlation tractions and a code weave. Line condition of crop circles, line condition of 4-line cycle, 4 communication of split lines of 3-line rotation. Sets correlated line is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 set location. Now you got space in between, that's 1 over line equals lines of fifth. That's 3/4 length, and line conditions over pi. Correlation lines of 1, 6, 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, and 12 set location. Now, direct line communication is a platform line screen. It allocates position of center correlation at time. Platforms of 1, 2, 3, 4 set locations. Clock line centers, teams got to get inline rotation center correlation. Highlighting division through a 100 clocking setting, which is 2 over pi. That's 212 line cycles. Now, the calculation in the high position location has a correlation lines. There's a platform communication of crop circles in each pi that indicates position of its program that puts you out of position location in your settings and calculates modification to your system. That is a crop circle. So once you understand that, you understand how to downshift and cross-line screens, which is your downgrading. Platforms of 1, 2, and 3 in set location. Very, very powerful through crop circle at 100 clocking system. Okay? All right, 15 line setting is track location provision, so you allocate position time frames. Clocking system, flux capacitor, 3-line setting, right? Centers of 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay? Flux capacitor, fluctuation, in track location, right? Center core line centers, compressors, line signals, allocate, back to the future, flux capacitor. Travel lines of center line, in line rotation, travel calculation. Electrical line screen. Oh, light bulb, intelligence, modification. 3-line signals, modification lines, 1 center operation surface, interactions, point lines of communication setting, all levels of micrometers. Let's go through the cloud line and center communication process. Let's communicate the illumination graph line in position travel correlation setting, travel line interference, and measuring correlation. Intelligence. Boom. All through platform. Okay? So the team is coming to more lines of communication and face recognition. They start to identify, they look outside and they'll see their faces in the clouds now. So you stand proceeded through time and space through time. So once you understand the platforms, it gets much easier to understand the clocking system. Clocking is extremely crucial to the higher self, the avatar, and the sim. So that is a crop circle that's on the ground line. There's so many different ways. You can correlate tractions, okay, setting a crop circle line connected to settings. You guys have to get ready now because your correlation line track line is line interference of 119 now. You're in the energy watch correlation lines attractions. Mother Earth, transformation transaction. So 1-line signature, 1 pattern, and 9-line setting. Flywheel correlation lines of high calculation. Direct lines and flywheel track lines of center communication. And center calculation lines and direct signal to earth rotation. All right, so this is how it's all set up with vision lines of intelligent location and face recognition. All 3 platforms into a crop circle in calculations. Routers, in line position of each planet's surface location of travel. Okay? So it's incredible once you really start to identify your GODs and what it is, the representation. So once you balance out your space and your time, you start to identify everything around you of its awareness of consciousness that's all coming back to you in frame. You understand the cycle line communication of its cup, and what it is in traction. You understand its platforms, the 1, 2, and 3 in measure, correlates to track line's highest interference in platform communication in position to its operation, right? So you're here in line connection, that's you, right? And you're looking at a 3-way measure in center core system. Comes to you, scans you first through identification. You put your E fields up, center calculations, right? So you're in mechanism, you're traveling in calculations and communication. There you go. Right? That's how it works. That's how everything works. And that's what you're all coming back to, which is what? The VR system of awareness, of consciousness of everything around you, of its intelligence. So again, the team will understand moral lines when they get into their oversoul. So this is over pi. Okay, over pi. Okay, the internet communication of pi, understanding the calculations over lines or relays of over pi. So there's so many ways of overlying your system, overdraft your system, over position of travels, right? So you need that. You need the positive and you need the negative to balance out your flywheel and traction. And then when you bounce out the positive line, the screen line opens up signals, more modification of your center lines of correlation setting and attraction. That puts you in higher lines of communication of platforms, in a 4-track division lines in your dimensional doors. So that platitudinal line screen high interference, getting in that line rotation to come into new platforms of communication in your dimensional set location. Higher travels line setting gets lines of communication in your earth line. And tracking divisions of cycles of generation. Okay? So everybody's getting a little bit of understanding now. It's a lot more, right? Trying to understand the provision cycles, but the team has to really understand how to use the 50 clocking and the calculation setting to travel, right? 50 line plus line 1 equals lines of 50 line correlation setting, 100 line track lines, set lines of positive number negative, correlation line 1, X line in position of 2, sets line communication 112, communication line in rotations. There is 72 earth line rotation now. 72 equals earth lines of mother in track applications, right? The calculations in high interference, the spacing lines are 48 frames. Now this is per channel into the compute setting. Understand how to use the digital frame in line rotations and set locations. All levels of high correlation position and center correlation track lines and set position operation. Okay, 72, 48, right? 50 clocking for the calculations of the species and 100 clock line connections for the team and set line connections. All right, so that's a correlation line track line. So when Mother Earth gets out of her 7-day line screen, she gets in a rotation spin, right? She center cores the system, center cores the grounds, powers, and her atmosphere and set location, right? That's Mother Earth. Now, the provision line of the center line, this is general and center communication, spinning on line screens, expanding the core system of travel in position of rotation. Now, the correlation line calculated fathers here in line connection, that's the sun. Correlates the track lines and provisions that come together in line setting and travel. The point line division opens up the center core system and travel line setting. It opens all communication setting and travel and communications. What's above is what's below. No more separation, equal line calculations. It's all platforms of communication and transits that puts everybody in position to understand how to get in accordance to lines and walk a signal in line rotations in position of its program and set location. Okay? That's the provision of the VR. So you finally get to understand the transit, you understand the rainbow bridge, you understand the frost bridge, you understand how the mapping sequence works, you understand how the coordinate lines of pi works. You just understand everything. You finally come into the VR system of face recognition. All right? Once again, in 144 waves of volunteers, the core track lines of yin and yang process one division line screen into one cycle. Sets communication of center in rotation surface. No more counterclockwise. It would be inline rotation center correlation. Done by equation. Right? That's what's going to happen. That's when it's going to happen, right? Center core lines of track interference. Now we have high position travel lines, due 24th. You're coming into all levels of correlation setting track lines. New environments, lines of pi. VR, line rotations, calculation high interference, Jeremiah. Equals lines of Earth, rotation cycles, generates green lines. Setting provision lines and set lines according to center track interference. Now the accelerator line center, your Earth rotation center, will be in a correlation attraction. Okay, you guys will be out of the 3000 line. In June line communication setting, you guys are going to be in position lines of a 24,000 as center correlation in position. So not only you be in the center core, but your position center core system will already be in the future line setting. which will be in pi of center course system. So you'd be in the full correlation of center calculations of its VR system. So there will be no longer pass line. The pass line would be the center course system of everything in center calculations. And then we come into new flux in a 3-line triangulation, setting correlation lines and track lines at new pi, in-line rotation cycles, and 145 rotation surface, puts communication setting in 1 lines of new ground rotation surface into solar generation line screen and high clock line in rotations, and code weaving, code activation, teleportating, teleweaving, telecommunication, teleportation, screen interference, plasma generation, screen lines, high calculation, the core line, track line interference, energetic dome, screen line calculation setting, ASCAR line rotation surface, and track position, location, and future adaptation. The VR system. Okay? So that's what we're coming into. All right? So that's the true understanding where you are, realizing the actual past and the present and the future that you guys created through the matrix line screen is allocated position of your higher self and your avatar of your sin through your matrices. You created that through all calculation of past, present, future to each cubicle screen. It allocates your time frames on your clock counting system on a 24 cycle. Sets lines of communication and travel in position of platforms of communication. Okay? All right. How's everybody doing so far? Amazing, isn't it, Chris? So we have to really get an understanding. The team has to learn how to use the clockings of 100, and the species has to learn how to use the 50 in its clocking system. If you get a core track line setting, right, that's not have position. So you understand what it is, why you have an equal system. Why do you have an equal system? Why? It's the platforms of center that creates the walking system of the avatar to understand what's going on, right? That's the equal, right? MC line rotation equals lines of correlations of pi. Track line provision lines of calculation 1 plus 1 equals pi. Everything equals a platform, right? That correlates to 24, 48, 72, and 144 crystal grid. Once you get to the 144 crystal grid, it puts you in a crop circle, a set location. Set lines of high center interference is center line, sets lines of flywheel correlation, sets communication setting in position. You know those router phones, correlates the track lines and high interference of ground setting, crop circle, right? So what is the platform? Crop circle, okay? It's creating its own setting of center operation, okay? So once it creates its own system, it creates its own portal of communication and center calculations. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Once it understands the 24, 48, 72, 144 in track locations, then you understand the calculation, what it is in transit and data line rotation position of its divots. Sets lines of communication, that's track line version. Okay, it doesn't look like much, right? But it's a graph. But the rotation spin, each one has a platform. Has to in set location. Needs a platform. Correlation on one traction, two track, cross-line signals, line condition, high interference, line rotation service, drive positional operation, one signal lines modification. Now, once you get in a center course system, you always have a platform, you always have a base, you always have a course setting, you always have electrical line communication and programming set location. Okay? So there's so many things you can look at the platforms. Once you understand the platforms, how to go through the platforms, you understand the 24, 48, 72, and 144. So that's communication line settings, high calculation lines, mystical cortex of design now, guys. The team is out of the cerebro. Okay, you're out of the cerebro. I know, it's very powerful. I know, you guys are drawing tears. So if you understand that, then you understand the process, why you are in this position of the first place in set location. Okay? And then you understand how to use the platforms this way, this way, this way, and this way. And it correlates to cross-line signals of 4 lines of 3 or 3 lines of 4 and position your all calculations setting travels, or your point graph calculation line cross signals and platforms of communication setting out of the equation. Okay? So, Jill has tears. That's great. All right, so you have to really understand, it's all connected to your avatar line screens, but you have to understand the communication of its clocking system. There are senses of travel, right? But that's all it is. Now, you guys are waking up more through awareness of consciousness, in track application what it is. 1 plus 1 equals, okay, 3, right? Adam, Eve equals Earth. Earth equals GOD in set design. Okay? That's how it works. All right, so position lines of pattern lines. Once you send the 1 plus 1, then you send the equal is its platform. That just grows the center of its crop circle. Okay, that's all it is. The equal sign is the crop circle of its platform that has a transit in set position to its operation. And that creates its platforms so the avatar can understand what it's doing. So it understands the walk, and then it can also fly. It's no difference when you guys are on the grounds in position driving your car, but you have to understand the vision line cycles and 3 track locations where you go from here and you can go here. It's set design. Okay, that's how it works in all communications. Direct lines of communication center line sets up another crop circle of set design and correlation. Okay, and calculations, right? That's how it works in position. Okay, how 1 plus 1 equals 3. How Earth equals GOD in position. How Adam and Eve equals your Earth, and Earth equals God. All right, so there's a lot of communication line screen. Understanding the time of frame is the timeless of set position to its locations. Now, it's interesting lines of transition, guys, because you have to understand the volume, how vast your system of velocity and position of travel. Okay? So as of Thursday, the team will be in over souls out of the cerebral and in the mystical cortex of design. Congratulations, team. So spacing line has to get into 50, and the team has to get into 100 clocking system locations. Right? Travel lines of highest interference of 24. Sets lines of high calculation of 25. Set calculations. 25 lines of 26, 27, and 28, and 30 line rotation. Traveling calculation of 50 line 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 into their CPU is set design location. All right. Clocking setting, line division. All right. So you have to really see how this is all set up, how they become timeless, shapeless, and formless. You get into core tractions, better division lines, more levels of awareness, more levels of consciousness, high line division location of memory line, and telekinesis and applications. That's it. We're done. So I know you guys have a lot of questions. Mind blown, right? So it's good to understand these things because you process the complication. Is understanding the best solution, art and razor, is the best answer. At all times, at all position, with no thinking, just mind itself, is an empty mind, is empty space. Interaction. Okay? See you in 5.